breaking development that we just got in the past couple of minutes. A second healthcare worker is hospitalized. And moments ago, we learned she actually took a plane flight from Cleveland, Ohio to DFW the day before she got sick.
First, that patient, as we take you live from Chopper 5, where hazmat teams have just arrived to decontaminate an apartment on Village Bend Drive. The newest person now battling Ebola is a woman who works at Texas Health Presbyterian. She is part of the team that helped care for Eric Duncan. And of course, Duncan is the Liberian national who died last week from Ebola. She went to the hospital last night with a fever, and that positive test for Ebola came back at midnight, triggering new precautions. Within the past 30 minutes, the CDC announced this new patient flew on a Frontier Airlines flight Monday night from Cleveland to DFW Airport. Frontier Airlines is working to reach out to all 132 passengers on that flight. Frontier Airlines flight number 1143. The CDC says it is important to note the patient showed no signs or symptoms of Ebola while flying to DFW.
All right, let's go back to that live picture from Chopper 5 as hazmat teams and cleanup is underway at the apartment where the patient lives. Now, this is the Village Bend East apartments. It's in the 6,000 block of Village Bend Drive. That's near Lovers and Skillman. Now, the city and the city council sent out teams to notify people living in that area and give them information about the Ebola virus and what's happening in their apartment complex. So we want to begin with NBC5 Jeff Smith, who is actually at Presbyterian Hospital with the latest there. Jeff, what do we know about the patient?
Well, we do not know a specific condition of this second woman, but we are told she is alert and she's able to talk with healthcare staff and the health investigators who are trying to figure out how she was exposed to the Ebola virus. We know she's a healthcare worker who helped provide critical care to Thomas Eric Duncan while he was fighting for his life against the Ebola virus, a fight he ultimately lost. And now this healthcare worker needs that same critical care herself. She is one of two healthcare workers who provided care for Thomas Eric Duncan, who is now being treated for the Ebola virus in isolation inside the hospital behind me. Now, we don't have a specific condition on her, but again, we are told she's able to communicate with state health officials and the CDC, and she's working to identify any potential contacts she had while she may have had symptoms and also identify any potential exposures. Of course, we just learned, as you mentioned, one of those potential exposures is everyone else on board that plane with her from Cleveland to DFW. Even though we are repeatedly told she was not showing any symptoms on board that plane, the CDC is working to identify every other passenger on board. The timeline over the last day and a half is pretty narrow. She, like the other 75 healthcare providers who treated Thomas Eric Duncan, had been self-monitoring their own conditions. It was their responsibility to check their health, take their temperatures. 2 days ago, she was on the plane with no fever, but yesterday she was monitoring her health and immediately noticed a low-grade fever. She called the hospital, and we were told within 90 minutes of that phone call, she was placed within an isolation unit here at Presbyterian Hospital. That Ebola test came back positive for Ebola around midnight this morning. So there are now two healthcare workers here that treated Duncan to have Ebola themselves. Now, a top hospital executive is admitting there have been mistakes. They got it wrong, and they're working to make adjustments now. And clearly, there was an exposure somewhere over the last week that put lives in danger.
A lot is being said about what may or may not have occurred to cause some of our colleagues to contract this disease. But it's clear there was an exposure somewhere, sometime in their treatment of Mr. Duncan. Let's be clear, we're a hospital that serves this community incredibly well, and we have for nearly half a century. We're a hospital that may have done some things different with the benefit of what we know today.
Now, the hospital said this morning that this is a gut check for them, that they now have two of their healthcare staff that are battling Ebola right now. And the number of potential exposures to the Ebola virus is literally growing by the minute. It was 48, you'll remember the contacts for Thomas Eric Duncan. Then it was 75, the number of healthcare workers who treated him, that large number, 75. And now we know within the last few minutes that's grown even more to the 132 passengers on board that plane with this second patient. We are asking the CDC for more information, and they will hold a media briefing this afternoon. We will keep you posted again as the second confirmed case of Ebola right here behind me. Back to you.
Jeff, thank you. And as news broke about this, people were literally just waking up with no clue of what's going on. They had hazmat lights in their apartments,